I'm going to play every Mount & Blade game ever made in one video, from a janky little indie game that could barely run without crashing, to the sequel that fans waited over a decade for. But I didn't stop at just the games. No, it wouldn't be a Mount & Blade video if I didn't also dive into the mods. Total conversions that can take this medieval sandbox and turn it into something its developers never could have imagined. Star Wars, we got that. Lord of the Rings, we got that too. This is a franchise with one of the most dedicated communities in gaming. A player base known for its ridiculous memes, and an obsessive modding scene that is somehow still keeping a game from 2010 alive and thriving in 2025.
Today, the gods will decide your fate.
I charged through potato-faced armies, massive laggy sieges, and almost 2 decades of gaming history to see how a medieval indie game became the blueprint for an entire genre. And it all started with one of the ugliest games I have ever seen. Mount & Blade laid the foundation not only for everything the series would come to be known for, such as Bannerlord, King Harless, but also for medieval sim games in general. You may have heard of Kingdom Come Deliverance, Mordau, Chivalry, For Honor, or Conqueror's Blade. Each of these games in varying ways can trace their inspiration back to this goofy little medieval sim made almost 20 years ago. You'll constantly hear them all compared to the Mount & Blade franchise. Things like, yeah, but the combat wasn't as good as Mount & Blade's though. This just really goes to show how good the series is. This game in particular, while it's clearly the most basic in the franchise, set the tone of the entire series. You would ride around on your horse, if it didn't get stolen, hiring troops from the local villages to then go out and get into full-scale battles with the local bandits. It gave you that unparalleled player freedom that people always seem to want nowadays, letting you experience the rising to power in a realistic feudal society, fighting in grandiose battles to protect your fiefs. And supposedly, there are even some semblance of tactics in this game, but as Sun Tzu once famously said, oh fuck it, F1 plus F3. There's something really immersive about the combat in this game series. Despite looking like literal walking potatoes, when I got into the battles, I had the sudden masculine urge to give my troops a speech before charging into insurmountable odds against the legendary Sea Raiders. They think we are few. They are wrong. We are many. Because every fallen friend rides with us. Hear them in the wind and make the ground remember their names. But Mount & Blade had its problems. With no real animation team yet, it felt quite clunky. The battles weren't nearly as grand as later entries with only 100 troops on the battlefield at once, and that unfortunately would cause it to age quite poorly. At this point, there isn't much of a reason to actually play this game outside of just like the historical or nostalgic aspect of it. A siege with only 50 men on every side doesn't quite fit the setting of a medieval battle simulator that people were hoping for. But at the same time, this was an indie game and didn't have the budget of the later entries like Warband or especially Bannerlord, so there were so many limitations. While the franchise isn't exactly known for having great AI, in the original game it's especially bad. Constantly troops get stuck on each other and the walls, archers staring at walls instead of stepping into the holes where they can actually shoot out of, and battles between AIs would turn into wet noodle slapping contests. And the game looks absolutely horrid, but like in the most charming of ways. Its character creation alone rivals that of Dark Souls 1 and Oblivion in their ability to make peak potato characters. But the combat didn't make up for this much either. While it had the same combat style, it was much harder to tell which direction the enemies were actually swinging from due to the poor animations and poor textures on top of it.
Motherfucker, run! Freeze! Raider! I think it's Raider! He's right behind me, Raider! Raider, please stop!
Making this the least intuitive combat of all the entries in the series. As someone who played Warband for hundreds of hours before ever touching the original, opening up the map just felt off, almost uncanny. We now have banana nords, the Rodoks are a light blue, the Vagers are green, and the Saranids are just non-existent. Everything is close-ish to where they would end up being, but not quite the same. But despite all of this, the game still set up the franchise's core elements extremely well. Recruiting your soldiers, talking to people for tasks, politics, and battles. Though Mount & Blade isn't known for its story, this game does have the least story to it. There isn't even a prologue like Warband. You're just thrust into the world. And while it's charming to look at as an old title, I'm sure this could be quite frustrating to someone unfamiliar with the series or back in the day. With the foundation in place though, it was time for Mount & Blade to take its full form, with some actual financial backing of Paradox Entertainment after the small success of Tale World's first game. See, Mount & Blade walked so that this game could sprint and win Olympic gold in 2010. And this game, of course, is Mount & Blade Warband.
I will drink from your skull!
The only thing you will be drinking from is a straw once I'm done with you. The follow-up game to the original actually wasn't technically a sequel at all, but rather served more so as a standalone expansion which added in the Saranids, fixed all the faction colors, and made the map make more sense. Before even getting into gameplay, this was already a superior game in pretty much every single way. Is the crossbow any more accurate in this game? Stop it. Yeah, you like that? Right in the knee. You had more advanced options to hone in the difficulty of your playthrough, and the music, oh my god. You ever just hear a soundtrack and it instantly warps you back into a nostalgia time portal? Games like Skyrim, Donkey Kong Country, or Final Fantasy battle themes, any of them. That's exactly how Warband's OST is to me. From hype battle soundtracks like Fight While Mounted, ow, or the Bandit Fight theme. They really gotta work on these names. To peaceful open world lullabies like Swati and Hall. Or the ever iconic Victory theme. Every single song struck me upside the head like an angry Latina with a sand. It reminded me just how awesome this game was. Speaking of which, why was it awesome? What made this so much better than the original? Thanks for asking, my studious viewer. Well, to start, the opening prologue made the game a lot more accessible for new players. The tutorial missions were a lot better. In fact, they existed. And of course, just bigger quests in general in the game. It added way more in terms of ways to get money, pillaging, raiding, herding those stupid cattle, etc, etc. But most importantly, bigger armies. Come on, horsemen. We charge into battle first. Now allowing up to 150 troops per fight at once. Sieges were a lot more fleshed out with more possible siege weapons to choose from, and on top of all of that, the expanded troop trees with more varieties in every battle and faction. Now allowing the ability to really build up an army that has the best of all worlds, the Giga Chad infantry of the Nords, to the Soy Boy Swadian cavalry, all within one army. One of my favorite parts about the Mount & Blade franchise is the first few hours, the slow grind of building up your small army, picking up recruits from villages, only to just be ran down by some grumpy sea raiders, taking you captive, and making you start back from scratch again. Ow! In a world of lords, fiefs, and kingdoms, you are simply a man trying to make a name for himself. The entire game is set up to be about you trying to build up an army and gaining renown as an aspiring lord. And when that first battle with the local bandits finally comes, you have some real personal stake in it. Leaving the hold position. Do not charge, gentlemen. Surround them. Let them taste our steel. And stop surrounding me. Likely being the only member of your army with a horse, and any decent equipment, you feel the need to get in there and really dwindle down the enemy numbers. Take a few hits and try your best not to let the enemies take your small warband's lives. See what I did there? And no matter how many times I replay the start of Warband, it always feels this way, and it's perfect. They managed to nail down the early parts of this game to a T. You always feel like accidentally getting caught with your pants down by the local sea raiders could be the last time you could see any of your recently acquired men. Oh, I am not afraid of you, I will fight! You're not a king yet, you're not even a count, or a petty lord. You have nothing to your name but the clothes on your back and the sword on your hip. You have to be very careful in every choice you make. Pick up too many troops without considering the wages or the food of your troops, well, they'll start to leave your company. And even food is a whole micromanaged game of itself. Like, cheaper options like grain or butter are great for having consistent food. Armies do get bored of it, and therefore morale might go down. So you may want to think of getting vegetables, meat, or even wine. What if you have too much meat? It will start to rot, wasting your precious dinars, and your morale will drop. It's all worth it once you get that first troop upgrade. That first time you see that the local Swadian soy boy now has his horsey, or the Nord is throwing axes with the ability to hold off even sea raiders. My favorite way to make money early game comes with trying to gain renown. And what better way to make some panties drop than to win in the local arena tournaments? I'd head to the nearest major city having one, placing massive bets on myself to win it all because I'm smarter than your average AI. As long as the game doesn't make me use the lance in the arena for the 100th time in a row. Another lance? You gotta be fucking You fight your way through random civilians, trained militia, lords, and even the king themselves sometimes. The game really starts though, once you finally conquer your first castle, taking over this territory as your own, and always having to be mindful should it be attacked. Then also needing to get a wife to look over the castle where you're out putting the forehead eyebrow people to shame. You're always the oppressor up to this point, never having anything besides your own lives to defend. Constantly on the attack, but now you had to consider how you might defend your castle should your liege declare war upon a local faction. Thinking also about how you would upgrade your local fiefs to eventually get them to bring in taxes of their own. It started out as this RPG adventure game where you commanded and enlisted troops, and then turned into a kingdom management simulator, all mixed up together in one very delicious butter pot. You can hopefully now see why this is one of my most played games of all time. Outside of Skyrim, Warband is my most played game of all time, sitting at almost 400 hours. And if I had it my way, I'd play another 1,000 hours, but we do have to make YouTube videos and stuff occasionally. I like to eat after all. And this was all without mentioning one of the most important things that made Mount & Blade Warband so great. As a Skyrim player, and a previous channel focused on Skyrim modding, I'm very well aware of just how massive the modding scene can be, but Warbands is insane. Besides the Elder Scrolls series, Warband is the biggest modding scene I've seen in a game. And what better way to start us off than what every modded game needs? A total Star Wars conversion mod? What is going on here, dude? When you think of modding, your mind may wander things like, ooh, enhancements to the game's visuals or gameplay. But when I think of modding, I think of total overhauls that take the base game, toss the concept of it out the window, and make something entirely new. In this case, going from a medieval sandbox game to the greatest Star Wars game I've ever played. This is Star Wars Conquest. A very fun but clunky mod where you play as a goddamn clanker. Oh my god, look at him, it's beautiful. I truly love this overhaul, introducing lightsabers, blasters, droids, Sith, and every other race you can even think of into this world. Especially when Star Wars games tend to fall flat outside of classics like KOTOR. So let me go out playing as a droid. My name is Clank Quavius. Being able to walk up into Mustafar to follow the orders for Darth Vader just feels perfect. He even commented and said that my name strikes fear into the hearts of enemies. I know your name, it strikes fear in men's hearts. Oh hell yeah, Darth Vader just raided us. I blushed a little. Moving on from Star Wars though, with the mod list, The Last Days of the Third Age. A little known fact about me is that I absolutely love The Lord of the Rings. It's my favorite book series, I love the movies, even the Hobbit movie trilogy was pretty solid too. But just like Star Wars, outside of a few, the games tend to land flat for whatever reason. Shadow of Mordor being my personal favorite though. This mod, however, really helped immerse me into the world of Lord of the Rings. Getting to see the different factions on a map finally, just to see how the war for Middle-earth was really playing out. Chose to play as my favorite race, the dwarves. They're quite small in number and height, bunkered up in just a few remaining mountain cities. But that doesn't stop them from being some of the most badass troops in media. I found it quite hilarious not to be able to see the dwarves' head in the character frame because of how short they were. And even the camera was too high in battle to really see them if you didn't use the special free camera the mod list came with. Overall, this was a fun mod list as well, despite being quite slow and tedious. To round off our trio of mod lists, we have Prophecies of Pendor. This one I've heard high praises sung about across the hills, and I see why. Of all the mod lists I've played, this is the most narrative driven. She gifted you your father's sword, a family heirloom which you could defend both your honor and your life. Oh my god, hell yeah, dude. Creating an entirely new world outside of any pre-existing media, and bringing to life the world of Pendor. Pendor, much like The Last Days, brings back a bit of that fantasy aspect that the original concept for Mount & Blade had started with. All in all, these are just a few of many Warband overhaul mods. These modders, much like the Elder Scrolls community, is what's really kept the game alive within the decade-long gap between main title entries. These modders were so good, in fact. There's even a few that Taleworlds brought on to make official DLC for Warband. These being Napoleonic Wars and Viking Conquest. Starting with Viking Conquest, we're no longer in the lands of Calradia, but rather the lands of Wessex, territories that would later become known as modern-day Europe. This is the most story-driven of all the Mount & Blade experiences to date. You play as this Viking looking to, well, make a name for himself, start raiding the Anglo-Saxon coasts. But this DLC wasn't shallow at all. In fact, it added the religions of Christianity and paganism, more realistic ways of recruiting volunteers for your army, naval combat, and even made the entire experience harder just because. Getting shanked in the back now was a critical hit, and one misstep with a charging lancer coming at you could result in a one-shot. For me, it's no surprise that this is my favorite overhaul of them all, as I'm an absolute sucker for Viking experiences. I tend to play as a berserker archetype in any game that has it, and I have quite a few share of hours in games like Valheim and Life is Feudal. Really, anything to give me a taste of the Viking playstyle. Overall, I would say that Viking Conquest delivered my favorite single-player experience. But this is the perfect segue into talking about the other thing that has kept Warband so relevant for these long years, even beyond Bannerlord's arrival: multiplayer. I've made friends. With the DLC Napoleonic Wars, also known as Pike and Shot, this DLC would serve also as one of the only games to my knowledge to cover this era of combat style. It's the most immersive game I've ever played. Hey man, I was trying to check out your bathroom. Time for a little history lesson. This style of warfare tactic emerged in the early 15th century and remained dominant up until the 17th century. This type of fighting featured groups of pikemen to stop the dominant French cavalry charges, with riflemen placed on the outside in a winged formation to further destroy any troops as they charged. But how does this apply to Mount & Blade? Well, this DLC was entirely multiplayer. People could actually form these lines, and it ended up absolutely exploding the multiplayer of the series. So I dove in for the first time to, see what it was about. And I will say, I was getting cooked. Oh my god, he's beating my ass. Never having played multiplayer warband of any kind, let alone the kind featuring guns, it was a bit of a rude awakening as I constantly got shanked or sniped with a musket. Eventually, I figured it out a bit and got myself a few kills. Nice! I got one. This was a really fun experience despite me sucking. Oh! No. And I can see why players would love this style of gameplay. Featuring up to 250 players on the same map, it was insane, especially for the time. But I will say that multiplayer isn't really my personal cup of tea, but still, I enjoyed my time nonetheless. Building off of that, though, would come the next entry in the Mount & Blade series, Fire and Sword. This wouldn't be a sequel, but rather, just like Warband was a standalone expansion to Mount & Blade, Fire and Sword would serve as a standalone Warband expansion, based on the novel of the same name by Henryk Sienkiewicz. It was set during the 17th century in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. This would be the first real game that had a proper story attached to it, with 3 main quest lines going with 3 separate factions in the game. Have no fear, Archibald is here. One of my favorite things about this game is actually just how inaccurate the muskets are. Fire! Reloading happens to the best of us. Oh shit, they got guns, Like, gunpowder weaponry was used on the battlefield, sure. These were really early prototypes of the guns we have today, and as such, should not be shooting fucking piss missiles at my dome piece every single time. And they don't. Ow, can't miss when I shove the barrel down your nuts. But when used cleverly, when set up with a strong line of infantry and enough gunpowder troops, they could prove very effective and difficult to charge, the true counter to the fuck it F1 plus F3 mindset. However, the age of the sword and bow was far from over, so it gave a really immersive look into the historic time period and how fights of this age might actually play out. Even more so, when trying to siege castles, they were extremely difficult. Look at my army of fucking men. Leading Tale Worlds to come up with new, clever ideas for how we would do so, such as busting holes in walls or poisoning the water supply. With the era of gunpowder, casualties on the battlefield were at an all-time high, so you had to be more tactful in your planning or risk losing an obscene amount of men. Overall, I did enjoy playing Fire and Sword. I don't think it's near the level of Warband. I'm sure most people agree, and even the player base agrees, but it would be the last actual game we'd get for 11 years. And Viking Conquest was the last piece of extra content we'd get for the series, and that dropped in 2014. Tale Worlds decided to drop their publisher, Paradox Entertainment, wanted to strike out on their own with the next release of the series, Mount & Blade 2, Bannerlord. Announced all the way back in 2012, this game would enter one of the worst development hells I've ever seen. This was set to be the sequel to Warband, the most anticipated game that Tale Worlds would ever make, with the trailers getting millions of views. The problem was, the game wouldn't fully release for another 10 years after announcement. But I'm used to waiting forever on new games to release. I'm an Elder Scrolls fan. Skyrim came out in 2011. Our trailer was released in 2017. Fucking 2025. I'm gonna have kids before I get to play Elder Scrolls 6, I swear to God. Anyways, back to Bannerlord. When the game did release eventually into early access in 2020, apparently it was absolutely riddled with bugs. No surprise there. I'm really starting to see the comparison to Bethesda here actually. It was dubbed Warband HD, a prettier, buggier release of the old game. While it did have some new features, it came with plenty of bugs and was missing a lot of things promised by the devs. They do their best in the following week, releasing 7 patches in 7 days, leading to mostly positive reviews of the game. But it's been 5 years since then, and I want to dive in for the first time ever as a Warband player with just about 400 hours, and after having just played every previous entry, see if they did it justice, or if this might be the downfall of the franchise. Drumroll please. As the game is right now, I think they cooked hard. It added a lot of things from other games in a similar market, seemingly from games like Crusader Kings 3 or even Civilization. These extra added elements to make each village, castle, and town feel like they actually have a purpose within the world, outside of just being raider fodder for my army fueled by pure butter and rage. I've played a lot of CK3, and seeing Mount & Blade take the lineage system in some degree into their game just makes perfect sense. Being able to build up your own customized clan, where you get to mold each member of it is awesome. And I never knew I needed it until now, but I don't think I could play without it.
Family, family, family.
The best way I can put it is that Bannerlord took everything good about Warband, kept most of it, and then made it more immersive in a bunch of ways. When you enter battle now, the arena you fight on is not determined based on where you are on the map, rather than just like a randomly given map. This means that if you're near a river, or in the snow, or in hilly terrain, the battle map will reflect this. By the way, gentlemen. Oh, nice kill on the horse. Get his ass. This added some really dope extra layers of depth to the combat encounters themselves. Now you need to think, if you're running cavalry, maybe wait till the enemies aren't on hilled terrain first before engaging. Speaking of engaging, the questing in Bannerlord is way freaking better than Warband. In previous entries, half your missions would just be mailman quests for lords. While those do still exist, I'm sure. I did caravan escort missions, simple fetch quests, killing quests.
You ain't going nowhere.
And things a bit more in depth, like fetch me 10 looters used for manual labor, or please stop my brother from being murdered by the brother of the guy he murdered. These made me want to keep doing quests, getting money, and exploring the map. Oh, and you no longer have to herd cattle.
They are. Wait, I don't have to herd them?
Oh my god, this is the greatest. They go in your inventory. Like, thank you. And then on top of all of that, my favorite feature that they added, smithing. It's such a simple concept. Let the players craft their own weapons, but they didn't stop there. You can complete orders for NPCs to get gold. You have to also venture around the various fiefs to collect materials to be able to craft. It's up there for me as one of the best smithing systems in any game, and this is without it even having a mini game attached. Insane work. So yeah, I think Bannerlord has been an excellent sequel to the Mount and Blade franchise, expanding it in clever ways without losing the core gameplay loop that fans adore. However, there are still many things missing that are basically promised to fans.
This is diabolical.
A few of these things were expanded banditry and interaction with the city gangs. Outside of doing quests for gang leaders, there's not much here at all. Then expanded settlement management. This somehow got worse in Bannerlord, taking away that each city has its own fief. Upgrades kind of just sort of feel like I'm playing a shitty version of Clash of Clans, but I don't like being super negative, so let's move on from there and just enjoy the game as it is. I did briefly try out War Cells, but honestly, not to be a negative Nancy, but it really didn't do much for me. It felt like a weak attempt at recreating the success of Viking Conquest, but since fans really want them to fix things, releasing a DLC with an, albeit cool, but buggy ship combat system is probably not your best bet for PR related things. Outside of that, like I've said before, modding is a huge thing for the Mount and Blade franchise, and has been for its whole lifetime. So I'd be doing this a disservice not to cover some Bannerlord mod overhauls. While there aren't nearly as many mod overhauls to the same level as the Warband ones covered previously in this video, there are two overhauls in particular I really enjoyed. The year is 1568. Oda Nobunaga marches on Kyoto. The Ashikaga shogunate is weak. The daimyos of Japan ignore the authority of the shogun. You are looking to fight to claim power and influence for yourself amidst this destructive time in Japan. Some of my favorite parts about this mod list are the troops to begin with. You need to play as a goddamn samurai, just fits so well into the Mount and Blade experience. And it incorporates some super duper useful mods that fix some of those broken promises I mentioned before. One of those being diplomacy. This allows you to form alliances with the other daimyos, add messengers, non-aggression pacts, claiming fiefs you led the charge on, and the ability to cause a civil war. Really, I could just talk on diplomacy mod itself, as it fixed and expanded on everything that Tailworld's promised and never delivered, but back to Shokuho. It has even small details that flesh out the gameplay, such as being able to enlist in a lord's army as an ordinary troop, fighting your way up through the ranks to get promoted and earn new equipment. Where it really shines is in sieges. See, the sieges in Shokuho have a unique tiered system, forcing you to fight your way through multiple deadly checkpoints to mimic the actual castle designs of the time. So assaulting a castle takes some serious amount of troop superiority to win.
I have no honor.
But really, again, the best part of this is that it's set in the feudal Japan era of time. And I don't know if it's just because I like anime or what, but samurai have to be like my second most favorite badasses, behind like Vikings or maybe pirates. Anyways, what this mod shows is that while Bannerlord hasn't reached the level of overall modding seen as Warband, it does have some really amazing mod overhauls with actual thought behind them. But you know what's even cooler than samurai?
Soldiers, when we marched from the cold hills of Calradia, we were not yet Romans. We were wanderers, bound by coin or by nothing at all. But look at you now, veterans of 100 battles, men whose blades have written their names upon the soil of every land they've conquered. You've crossed deserts that swallowed armies and seas that broke empires, and yet still you stand. Do you think the gods grant such endurance to cowards? No, they favor those who seize destiny by the throat and command it to kneel. The weak call it ambition, but I call it Rome.
Eagle Rising is the full Roman experience for Mount and Blade.
Well, god dang.
Well, really it's Europe, but what kind of man sees the Roman Empire and chooses anyone else? Certainly not me. The absolute quality of the armors and weaponry here cannot be stressed enough in my eyes. I trained up a small elite force of infantry to form my shield wall, and these dudes were mowing through everybody. Not a bandit, deserter, or anything stood a chance. Hell, I even partnered up in the arena with one of my legionnaires, and we wiped the floor with everybody. There he is. Oh, he ran him over. Oh, shit. Excellent work. Yeah. Just like Shokuho, though, it's the little things that matter. For instance, when you go into a city to purchase gear, there's publicly available stuff, but it's of lower quality. Motherfucker, that looks like a fucking saw. And if you want the good stuff, you have to talk to the smithing guild to get them to allow you to purchase the high quality stuff that is typically sold only to the military. Which to me, that just makes sense. Like, I don't think I can just go buy top of the line military equipment right now. Or maybe I'm just not trying hard enough yet. I haven't got my B-52 bomber Amazon package yet. Some other small concepts I really liked in this mod pack was the ability to educate yourself at major cities. Alexander had his Aristotle, and I have nobody. Actually, they said I was too stupid and that I was helpless. Games are so realistic now, man. Speaking of realistic, I have no friends. And Bannerlord is similar. Its multiplayer space is pretty fucking dead compared to Warband. I found a match for Napoleonic Wars in about 10 seconds. Bannerlord, however, is a bit of a graveyard online. Outside of a few private servers from what I can tell, I don't know if the online audience is just all European, my time zones are off, or what, but I just could not get into a match. So unfortunately, I got tired of waiting, and I don't want to unfairly judge the multiplayer experience since I didn't get to have it. This was my Mountain Blade experience. Hopefully this video pops off so that we can get like some more people online for Bannerlord, because god damn it, I wanted to try it. Now, to get to what you've all been waiting for. My opinion on which game is the best, so you can either glaze or pitchfork me, you sick bastards. Well, I think Warband is still the most complete game in the series. Even without the DLC, the base game just has much more nuance to it in my opinion. However, I do think that Bannerlord's getting close. There's still a lot of things I'd like to see changed, but just like a good Bethesda game, people have already fixed these issues via mods. But I'm not team doomy gloomy for Bannerlord. A lot of people thrash it, with mostly fair reasoning, but I give them credit. With the most recent update, it is extremely fun with the stealth and such, so we'll see. Before you go though, if you like this video, and want early access to future videos, as well as exclusive polls, then consider joining my Patreon or YouTube membership, and check this video out next.